Throwaway account for obvious reasons. I, 35M, have been married to my wife, Emma, 32F, for almost 6 years. We don't have kids, and honestly, I was okay with that. We always talked about waiting until the right time, but that time never seemed to come. Still, I loved her, and we had a decent life together. I worked as a systems analyst and made pretty good money, so we lived comfortably. A few months ago, Emma started using Uber more often. Nothing strange about it at first. She doesn't drive, and she'd usually Uber to work, to see friends, or just run errands. There's this one driver she kept getting rides from. Mike. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. I mean, these apps are random, right? Sometimes you get the same driver. But it wasn't random. Emma started bringing him up in conversation. A little too much. Mike says this, or Mike knows the best coffee shop. And Mike and I were talking about. It started bothering me, but I pushed it aside. Maybe I was being paranoid. I travel for work sometimes, and it felt like she always requested Mike when I wasn't around. I joked about it once, something like, "What's up with you and this Mike guy? Is he your personal chauffeur now?" She laughed it off and said, "He's just Nick." Well, I was ready. So, after that little joke about Mike, I let it go. I didn't want to be that insecure, paranoid husband. But as time went on, things got weirder. Emma was going out more often, saying she was meeting up with friends or just needing alone time to clear her head. Always taking an Uber, always mentioning Mike. One night I came home early from a work trip. I was exhausted and excited to surprise Emma. We had planned for me to come back the next morning, but I wrapped up my business early and thought it would be a cute little surprise. I even stopped by a bakery to grab her favorite pastries. I walked in the front door, expecting to see her in the living room or kitchen. But the house was empty. I called her, and she answered after a couple of rings, her voice a little breathless. "Hey, what's up?" she asked casually, but something felt off. "I'm home early," I said. "Where are you?" There was a pause. "Oh, I'm out with Stacy," she said quickly. Stacy is one of her closest friends, so it made sense. "We're just grabbing dinner. I'll be back in a couple of hours." I told her that was fine and hung up, but the whole thing bugged me. Emma didn't seem excited I was home early. No surprise, no. "I'll come back right away." Just casual. Something was definitely off. That night, I went to bed with a knot in my stomach. The more I thought about it, the more things didn't add up. Why was she hanging out with Stacy at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday? Why did she sound out of breath? And why the hell was Mike always in the picture? I decided to pay closer attention. Over the next few weeks, my suspicions only grew. Emma continued to mention Mike more frequently, and it felt like I was living in a reality show where the audience could see everything but me. One night, she came home later than usual, stumbling through the door with a messy bun and wearing a shirt that definitely wasn't hers. I raised an eyebrow, but all she offered was a breezy. Stacy and I went out for drinks. You know how it goes. I played along, but my gut was screaming. So, I decided to do something I hadn't done before. I checked her phone while she was in the shower. It felt wrong, but I needed answers. Her phone was locked, but I remembered she had recently changed her passcode to something new. I tried a few combinations until one worked, her birthday. Inside, I found messages with Mike that made my stomach turn. They weren't explicit, but the flirtation was palpable. "Can't wait to see you again. And you always know how to make me laugh," littered the conversation. There were also timestamps for rides that seemed way too late in the evening. Before I could spiral, I heard the shower turn off, and I quickly locked her phone back and placed it on the counter. When she came out, I tried to act natural, but the weight of the evidence pressed down on me. "Hey, you want to watch a movie?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Sure." "Let me get dressed," she said, heading to the bedroom. As she walked away, I felt anger bubbling inside me. I knew I had to confront her, but how could I do it without sounding completely paranoid? Maybe I needed more proof. The next day, I decided to follow her when she left for her lunch with friends. I figured if she was actually going to see Mike, I would finally know the truth. My heart raced as I slipped on my jacket and headed out. I parked a few blocks from our apartment, waiting for Emma to leave. My nerves were on edge. I kept replaying every moment that led me to this point. I couldn't believe I was about to spy on my own wife, but something inside me knew I had to see for myself if my fears were justified. After about 30 minutes, Emma finally walked out, her phone in hand, a bright smile on her face. She strolled down the street and, as I followed, I was amazed by how carefree she seemed. I kept my distance, trying to blend in with the passing traffic. I lost her for a moment in a crowd, but then I spotted her getting into a car. It was a familiar black sedan. My heart sank as I realized it was Mike's car. I quickly took a deep breath and fought the urge to confront them right then and there. Instead, I decided to follow them. They drove for about 20 minutes, and my mind raced with possibilities. Were they just going to grab lunch, or was this something more? I pulled into a nearby parking lot and kept my eyes on the road ahead. The car stopped at a park, and my heart dropped as I watched Emma and Mike get out. They walked hand in hand, laughing like they were in their own little world. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and started recording, needing evidence for when I confronted her later. But then, they moved to a secluded area under some trees, and what happened next made my blood run cold. They leaned in closer, and I could see Mike's hands move to her waist. Emma looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with a kind of happiness I hadn't seen in a long time. It felt like I was watching a train wreck in slow motion. Suddenly they kissed, a long, passionate kiss that felt like a knife to my gut. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My world was shattering in front of my eyes. Then I watched as they made their way back to the car, and that's when I knew I couldn't let this go any longer. I had to confront her. I drove home, my heart racing, planning how I would face her and the lies she had spun around me. It was time to end this charade once and for all. When I got home, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I paced around the living room, trying to gather my thoughts and prepare myself for what was to come. I didn't know how I'd confront Emma without letting my emotions take over, but I was determined to make her admit what I'd just witnessed. After what felt like an eternity, she walked in, laughing about something on her phone. The moment she saw me, her smile faded. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice tinged with surprise. "Yeah, I am," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see her instinctively tense up. "About what?" she asked, feigning innocence. "About you and Mike," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I saw you two today." Her face went pale. "What do you mean?" she stammered, crossing her arms defensively. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and showed her the video. "This. I saw you kissing him at the park. Don't lie to me, Emma. Just tell me the truth." For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. But then, she quickly shifted gears, her demeanor changing from shock to anger. "You were spying on me? What the hell is wrong with you?" "Spying? No, I was following you because I was worried. You've been acting weird for weeks," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "Acting weird? I can't believe you jumped to this conclusion." "It's not like that," she snapped back, her tone defensive and dismissive. "You're being paranoid." "Paranoid? I saw you with him." I felt my blood pressure rising. "This isn't just some friendship, Emma. You need to own up to what you did." She let out a frustrated laugh. "You think this is about you? This is about me needing a life outside of this house, outside of you. You never pay attention to me anymore." Her words hit me hard. "Is that really how you feel? So you think cheating is the answer?" She scoffed. "Oh, come on. It's not cheating if we haven't been intimate in ages. You're just too wrapped up in your job to notice." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "So that's it? You think that justifies sleeping with someone else?" Emma's expression shifted, and she crossed her arms tightly, a smirk creeping across her face. Maybe it does. Maybe I deserve better than to be neglected by my husband. It was a blow I hadn't seen coming, and the weight of her words settled heavily on my chest. I could feel a rage building inside me, but it was mixed with a profound sadness. I had never thought it would come to this. Emma wasn't just my wife, she was my partner, my confidant. Now, I felt like I was staring at a stranger. As I tried to process everything, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I wasn't going to let this slide. I would file for divorce. But first, I needed to make sure she understood the gravity of what she had done. Emma, you don't get to twist this around, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. I've been nothing but loyal to you. This isn't just about neglect, it's about betrayal. You think I haven't noticed how you've been pulling away? She rolled her eyes, dismissing my feelings as if they were insignificant. Please. You act like I'm the villain here. You don't know what I've been going through. I needed someone to talk to, someone who actually listened. Someone who listened? I scoffed, incredulous. You chose Mike. The guy you've been taking rides with for months? What about all those times I asked if something was bothering you? You never said a word. Oh, spare me the martyr act. You think you're such a good husband? You've been so focused on work and your career that I felt invisible. Her voice dripped with venom. You can't even admit you've played a part in this. Her words sliced through me, igniting a fire of resentment. So, it's my fault that you decided to cheat? You could have come to me. We could have worked things out. But no, you just jumped into bed with some guy. Maybe I did jump into bed with him. She shot back, her voice rising. At least he made me feel something. I didn't marry a ghost, you know. In that moment, I saw the true colors of the woman I had loved. This wasn't the sweet, caring Emma I had married. This was a stranger cloaked in bitterness and disdain. My heart ached at the realization. You want to know what? I'm done, I said, my voice steady now, despite the storm of emotions raging inside. I can't do this anymore. I'm filing for divorce. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a fleeting moment, I saw fear flicker across her face. You can't be serious. You're throwing everything away because of some stupid misunderstanding. Stupid misunderstanding? I barked. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is you actively choosing to betray me. You think this is just about sex? It's about trust. You shattered it. How am I supposed to look at you the same way again? Fine. Go ahead. File for your precious divorce. She screamed, her voice cracking. You think I care? You've already lost me. I felt a mixture of sadness and relief wash over me. I had always believed that love could conquer anything, but here I was, standing in front of a woman who had chosen betrayal over communication. Then maybe it's best for both of us, I replied quietly. I hope you find what you're looking for with Mike. I turned away from her, my heart heavy but resolute. I had made my decision. I would not let her manipulation and lies define my future. As I walked toward the door, I could hear her sobbing behind me, but I didn't look back. It was time to reclaim my life. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and painful conversations. I didn't sleep much, and every time I closed my eyes I saw Emma with Mike, laughing, touching. Everything we had shared felt like a cruel joke. I spent hours drafting the divorce papers, my fingers trembling as I typed out the details of our separation. It felt surreal that I was actually doing this. When I finally filed, it felt like a weight had lifted off my shoulders, but the emotional storm was far from over. Emma didn't take the news well. She bombarded me with texts, some filled with anger and others drenched in tears. You're throwing away our life. We can fix this. I love you. Each message only deepened the ache in my chest. I tried to stay calm and collected, responding when necessary but keeping my distance. I knew I needed to focus on myself and healing. I started spending more time with friends, trying to rebuild my life piece by piece. They were supportive, but it was hard to shake off the loneliness that crept in during the quiet moments. One evening, about a week after filing, I was sitting at a bar with a couple of friends when I heard my name being called. I turned around to see Emma storming in, her face flushed with anger and desperation. My stomach sank. Seriously? You're out here drinking? While I'm at home crying over you? She shouted, drawing the attention of everyone around us. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. Emma, this isn't the time or place. Not the time? You're the one who decided to throw our marriage away. How can you just move on like this? She cried, her voice breaking. I'm not moving on, I'm trying to heal. You made your choices? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Choices? You think I wanted it to come to this? She snapped. You pushed me away. You don't understand how lonely I felt. Don't make this about me, I said, frustration bubbling over. You had a choice every single day. You chose Mike. You chose betrayal. You didn't even try to talk to me about how you felt. Her eyes turned wild, and I could see the walls of her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. You don't know what it's like. You've always had your job, your life. You just didn't care enough to see me. Maybe you should have talked to me instead of screwing someone else. I shouted back, my patience wearing thin. She froze for a moment, a look of disbelief on her face. You really think I'm a terrible person? She whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. You think I don't regret it? It doesn't matter anymore, Emma. You made your choice, I said, my voice softer now, filled with a mix of sadness and anger. She stepped closer, her face mere inches from mine, the air thick with tension. You could still change your mind. We could go to couples therapy, work on things. I can change, I swear. I shook my head, stepping back. I don't think I can ever trust you again. This isn't just about love, it's about respect. You shattered that, and it's going to take more than a few sessions to fix it. Emma looked defeated, her defiance fading as the weight of reality hit her. What if I told you I'd end things with Mike? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know if that would make a difference, I replied honestly. I don't think I can go back to who we were. She stared at me, vulnerability flashing in her eyes. So this is it then? You're really going to throw it all away? Yeah, I am, I said, feeling the finality of my decision settling in. It's time for both of us to move on. With that, I turned away, leaving her standing there amidst the swirling emotions and memories of what once was. As I walked out of the bar, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow wash over me. I had made my choice, and now it was time to face whatever came next. After that night at the bar, I thought it would finally be over, that Emma would accept the divorce and let go. But I was wrong, things got worse. Much worse. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of missed calls and messages from her. They started out desperate and pleading, but by the time I scrolled through to the end, they had turned venomous. You're ruining my life. I'll make sure you regret this. There was no reasoning with her anymore. I ignored the calls, hoping that silence would cool her down, but she wasn't about to let me move on quietly. Over the next few days, she escalated things. She showed up unannounced at my apartment, pounding on the door in the middle of the night, shouting loud enough that my neighbors complained. When I didn't answer, she left messages like, I know you're in there, and you'll regret ignoring me. I had no choice but to block her number, but that only seemed to fuel her anger. One afternoon, I came home to find my car keyed, long, jagged scratches on both sides. I knew it was her. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. That same night, I noticed she had posted some cryptic, passive-aggressive messages on social media, clearly directed at me. Some people would rather destroy a relationship than admit they were wrong. I didn't engage, but it hurt seeing her trying to paint me as the villain to our mutual friends. The tipping point came when I returned home from work one day and found Emma sitting in front of my building, crying, mascara running down her face. I sighed, feeling the exhaustion in my bones. I had been trying so hard to distance myself, but she was relentless. Emma, you can't keep showing up like this, I said, keeping my voice calm as I approached her. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen from crying. I can't lose you, please. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me. I've already filed for divorce. You need to move on. This isn't healthy for either of us. Her face twisted, and she shot up from the steps, suddenly furious. You think you can just walk away from me? After everything? No, you're not walking away that easily. What are you talking about? I asked, my heart sinking. I could feel the storm brewing, and I wasn't prepared for it. You have no idea what I've been going through. I've been there for you, and you repay me like this? Her voice was rising, and a couple of people walking by stopped to stare. I felt my pulse quicken, embarrassed but also worried about what she'd do next. I'm not doing this right now, I said, turning toward the door. But before I could leave, she grabbed my arm and pulled me back, her nails digging into my skin. You're not going to just walk away, she screamed. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. What the hell, Emma? Let go. I pulled my arm free, my patience finally snapping. I'm done with this. You're not going to guilt-trip me into staying with you. Her face contorted with rage, and in that moment, I saw something dark and unhinged in her eyes. You think you're done? You're not done until I say you are. I didn't know what to say anymore. There was no reasoning with her, no way to talk her down from whatever edge she was on. I stepped away, trying to calm my racing heart. Emma, you need help. Please, just stop this. She didn't reply, just stood there shaking, tears streaming down her face as she glared at me. I'll destroy you, she whispered. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't the Emma I married, this was someone else entirely. Someone I didn't recognize. I walked inside without another word, locking the door behind me. My hands were trembling, and I realized I wasn't just angry anymore, I was scared. The next few days I took precautions. I changed my locks, filed a police report for the keyed car, and considered filing a restraining order. I couldn't believe this was my life now, living in fear of the woman I had once loved. But I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get even worse. The next week dragged on with an eerie quietness that felt like the calm before a storm. I tried to keep my distance from Emma, focusing on work and finding ways to rebuild my life, but the weight of her threats lingered in the back of my mind. I had contacted a lawyer to discuss my options, and I was prepared to take whatever legal steps were necessary to protect myself. Then, one evening, as I sat on the couch scrolling through social media, I noticed a new post from Emma. It was a picture of the two of us from happier times, captioned with a long, emotional rant about love and betrayal. She painted herself as the victim, describing how I had abandoned her and how I was destroying her life. Comments poured in from friends, most of whom were supportive of her, completely unaware of the truth. My heart raced as I read through them. You deserve better. You'll find someone who truly appreciates you. My phone buzzed with messages from mutual friends asking me what had happened, expressing concern over Emma's emotional state. I felt trapped. I wanted to explain my side, to tell them what really happened, but I knew that engaging with her narrative would only fuel her fire. Instead, I decided to remain silent, letting her continue to spiral. But then, things took a darker turn. The following night, I returned home from a long day at work, exhausted and eager to unwind. As I entered my apartment, I was hit with an overwhelming sense of dread. Something felt off. My instincts kicked in, and I scanned the living room. Everything seemed normal, but as I walked toward the kitchen, I noticed a light flickering in the corner of my eye. I stepped closer, and my blood ran cold. My kitchen window was smashed. Glass was strewn across the floor, and my heart dropped as I realized what it meant. In the middle of the chaos, I spotted a note taped to the refrigerator. I peeled it off, my hands trembling. It read, "You'll regret this. I will make you pay for what you did to me." Panic surged through me. I grabbed my phone and called the police, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. They assured me they would send someone over right away, but it felt like an eternity before they arrived. While waiting, I looked around, feeling more trapped than ever. The home I had built with Emma was now a haunting reminder of everything that had gone wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. When the officers arrived, I explained everything, showing them the note and pointing out the broken window. They took my statement and assured me they would investigate, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. They were used to domestic disputes and emotional outbursts, and I was just another case in a long line of them. "Do you want us to contact her?" one of the officers asked, and I felt a surge of indignation. "Contact her? Are you kidding?" "No. She'll just deny everything and make it worse," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. The officer nodded, scribbling down notes. "We recommend you file a restraining order. It could help protect you if things escalate further." As they left, I felt even more isolated. This wasn't just a bad breakup, it had spiraled into something dangerous and unmanageable. That night, I barely slept, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. My mind was racing with thoughts of what Emma was capable of. I had to do something to regain control. I started drafting a restraining order, determined to protect myself from her unstable behavior. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to end easily. Emma had always been stubborn, and I had a feeling she wouldn't just roll over and let me go. I needed to be prepared for whatever was coming next. The following days felt like a tightrope walk, balancing between fear and determination. I filed the restraining order, and the police took my concerns seriously, promising to keep an eye on things. Yet, despite the legal protections, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. Emma was unpredictable, and I knew she wouldn't take kindly to my efforts to distance myself. Then, a week later, everything came to a head. I was sitting in my living room, still trying to wrap my mind around the chaos of the past few weeks, when I heard a loud bang from the front of my apartment building. My heart raced as I rushed to the window, peering out through the curtains. There, parked on the street, was a black SUV, and standing next to it was Emma, looking wild and disheveled. My stomach dropped as I realized she was talking to Mike. They were close, too close for my comfort, and I could see her gesturing wildly, her face flushed with anger. Before I could react, she turned and marched toward my building. Panic surged through me, and I grabbed my phone, dialing the police. "I think she's coming for me. I need help," I whispered urgently, my voice trembling. "Stay on the line and find a safe place to hide," the dispatcher replied calmly. I quickly moved to my bedroom, locking the door behind me, my heart pounding in my ears. I could hear the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs, and then a loud banging on my door. "Let me in, you coward!" Emma shouted, her voice filled with rage. "I know you're in there." I held my breath, listening as she continued to pound on the door, her voice growing more frantic. "You can't hide from me. I'm not done with you." The tension in the air was suffocating. I glanced at my phone, still on the line with the dispatcher, who was reassuring me that help was on the way. "Stay calm, sir. Just keep your voice down," they advised. But Emma wasn't backing down. "Open this door. I just want to talk. You can't just throw me away like garbage." It felt like an eternity, but then I heard the sound of sirens approaching. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced with dread as I thought about what might happen when they arrived. Would she comply, or would this escalate? Suddenly, the banging stopped. I waited, straining to hear any signs of her movement. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps retreating down the hall. My heart raced as I listened, unsure of what was happening. Just as I started to feel a glimmer of hope, there was another loud crash. My front window shattered, and I jumped back in terror as Emma's voice rang out from outside. "You think you can get rid of me that easily? I'll make you pay." I froze as I saw her silhouette framed against the broken glass. My phone was still in my hand, and I could hear the dispatcher's voice in my ear, urging me to stay calm and keep them informed. "Help is on the way, sir," they said, but I felt a surge of panic rising within me. Emma looked crazed, her hair wild and her eyes filled with fury. "Get out here and face me," she yelled, her voice echoing down the hall. "You don't get to hide anymore." Just then, I heard the unmistakable sound of police sirens blaring. I looked out the window to see flashing lights approaching my building. Emma turned, her eyes narrowing as she realized the cops were coming. "Don't you dare call them!" she screamed, her voice cracking with rage. "You're not getting away with this." I watched as she spun on her heel, running toward the stairs just as the police officers burst through the front door. "Get down on the ground!" they shouted, their voices firm and commanding. I stood frozen, my heart racing as I watched the scene unfold. Emma was shouting, waving her arms in wild desperation, and the officers quickly surrounded her, their expressions serious and alert. "Ma'am, we need you to calm down," one of the officers said, trying to de-escalate the situation. But Emma wasn't listening. She continued to lash out, her anger boiling over. "You don't know what he did to me," she screamed, pointing toward me. "He's ruining my life." "Step back, ma'am," another officer said, moving in closer. "You're going to have to come with us." In that moment, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. This was the end of it, the end of our toxic relationship, the end of the love I once thought we had. As the officers took Emma away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality wash over me. Once the chaos settled and I was assured that Emma was taken away safely, I knew I could finally start to heal. I had faced my worst fears, and now it was time to reclaim my life. As I stood there, watching the flashing lights fade into the distance, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was free. Free to begin again, free to build a future that was mine and mine alone. Emma's chapter was closed, and it was time for me to turn the page.